3 days. You have exactly 3 days to convince my father she's not some gold digger you picked up off the street, or this entire charade blows up in our faces, and so does your future, Ms. Tremaine." Ethan Montgomery's cold, razor-sharp voice still echoed in the thick air of the top-floor conference room of Montgomery Enterprises, where huge glass walls revealed a panoramic view of the glittering Chicago below. Outside, the city was roaring with the hustle and bustle of a late fall afternoon, the wind from Lake Michigan blowing through the skyscrapers, carrying a chill. But inside the room, the tension was even more chilling. Ava Tremaine swallowed, feeling the cold sweat forming on her temples as she faced the powerful CEO, the man whose cruel fate had just bound her to a fateful contract, and now an uncertain future. The air in the opulent private conference room on the top floor of Montgomery Enterprises was so thick it could be cut. Ethan Montgomery, CEO of Chicago's leading real estate and finance conglomerate, felt his expensive silk tie tightening around his throat. He loosened it a little, tried to take a deep breath, but his chest still felt heavy. Across the polished mahogany table, he sat Samuel Weiss, his personal lawyer and rare confidant, and a woman Ethan had only just learned the name of. "Mr. Montgomery, this is Ms. Ava Tremaine. She has agreed to the terms," Samuel Weiss announced, his voice carrying the steady tone of a seasoned attorney. Ethan skimmed through the last few pages of the thick document on his desk. Provisional marriage agreement. The words danced before his eyes, but his mind was reeling from invisible pressures. His father, Richard Montgomery, the founder of this empire, a man he both respected and feared, was growing weaker, and his last wish, or rather unspoken condition, was to see his only son settle down, a condition that, if not met, could jeopardize Ethan's position as CEO. "Good. Let's get this over with," Ethan muttered dryly. He didn't bother looking up at the woman named Ava Tremaine. He pictured her as someone practical, maybe a little plain, willing to accept this odd arrangement for money, someone easy to control, no emotional baggage. He put down the Mont Blanc pen and signed his name firmly on the last line. Done. One burden was temporarily lifted, but another, more complicated one was about to fall. He raised his head, intending to hand the signed contract to Samuel. And that was when his eyes actually met Ava Tremaine's. A moment of shock. The woman sitting across from him was nothing like he had imagined. Ava Tremaine, despite wearing only light makeup and a simple navy blue business dress, still exuded a natural, elegant beauty that was hard to describe. Her chestnut brown hair was neatly tied back, revealing a long, elegant neck and a harmonious oval face. But what surprised Ethan most were her eyes. A deep, intelligent emerald green. A little sad, but shining with a determination and undisguised pride. She did not seem shy or greedy, as he had imagined someone who would sell 6 months of her freedom. Ethan felt a slight electric current running down his spine. He had absolutely no idea that the candidate Samuel had found for the role of his wife would be this beautiful. Not a flashy, gorgeous beauty like the models or actresses he occasionally saw at events, but a subtle, profound beauty that made people unconsciously look at her. The surprise was evident on Ethan's face, even though he tried to maintain his usual cool demeanor. He felt his heart beat faster, a purely physiological reaction that he could not control. Ava Tremaine nodded to him, a polite but distant smile playing on her lips. She didn't seem fazed by Ethan's stare. She seemed prepared for anything. Samuel Weiss, noticing the unusual silence, coughed lightly. Breaking the silence, "Ethan, your father, Richard, has scheduled a family dinner for this Friday. He wants to meet your fiancé. Only 3 days left. 3 days." The pressure of time was like a bucket of cold water poured over Ethan, pulling him out of his initial shock. 3 days to transform this strange, albeit stunningly beautiful, woman into a convincing fiancé in the eyes of a wise, experienced father like Richard Montgomery. The task suddenly became more difficult than he had thought. A few weeks ago, in the private study of his Lake Michigan mansion, Richard Montgomery, His face stern, but his voice laced with undisguised concern, called Ethan in for a chat. "Ethan," he began, his voice a little hoarse. "My health hasn't been great lately. The doctor says I need to avoid all stress. You know, Montgomery Enterprises is my life's work. But what I really want right now is for you to settle down and have a family." Ethan listened silently. He knew his father was not just talking. His chest pains were becoming more frequent. A man who can't manage a family, how can he manage a large corporation? Richard continued, looking straight at Ethan. "I need to see maturity and stability in you. Ethan, not just in the business world. The board of directors is also watching closely. They need a leader who can bring long-term trust." His father's words weighed heavily on Ethan. He tried several matchmaking sessions arranged by his stepmother, but they all ended in failure. The women were either too boring or too interested in his wealth. The immense pressure of work, the scrutiny of the media, and the scars from several failed relationships in the past made Ethan increasingly withdrawn. Finding a sincere relationship seemed impossible, desperate. He turned to Samuel Weiss. The marriage contract was a last resort, a drama to appease his father during this sensitive period, to maintain his position in the company. He asked Samuel to find someone discreet, intelligent, who could play the role well, and most importantly, would not cause any emotional problems after the contract ended. He did not think about the beauty factor. Meanwhile, in another corner of Chicago, Ava Tremaine was going through the hardest days of her life. She was a talented interior designer with a passion and a keen eye for aesthetics. But a year ago, a trusted business partner scammed her out of their shared design studio, leaving Ava $80,000 in debt. All her hard work had gone up in smoke. To make matters worse, Ava's only remaining family member, Grace Tremaine, had just been diagnosed with a terminal illness that required a $65,000 course of treatment, a fraction of which was covered by her health insurance. The massive hospital bill, the worried look on the doctor's face, and the sight of her mother's increasingly frail body haunted Ava every night. She worked hard, taking on small design projects and selling valuable items, but the money she made was a drop in the bucket. When Samuel Weiss, through an acquaintance in the art industry, approached Ava with this strange offer, she flatly refused. Her pride would not allow her to do such a thing. But then, when she saw the debt collection notice from the bank and her mother's new prescription, Ava was desperate. The sum of $300,000 for a 6-month fake marriage, plus a bonus if it was successful, was the only lifeline for her and her mother. After many sleepless nights and intense internal struggles, she nodded in acceptance, her heart heavy. She told herself that this was just a role, a temporary job to save her family. Back in the conference room, Samuel Weiss began to explain the main terms of the contract. The term is 6 months. Ms. Tremaine, during this time, you will act as Mr. Montgomery's fiancée and then his new wife. You will be required to attend family events and a few important company events. The most important thing is to keep the nature of this arrangement absolutely confidential. There will be no emotional or physical intimacy between the two of you. Ava listened intently, nodding at important points. Her expression was professional, but a little distant. "I understand," she said, her voice surprisingly clear and calm. "I will do my best to fulfill my role." Ethan, still a little dazed by Ava's sudden beauty, tried to regain his cool, practical composure. He didn't want to let her see any sign of his agitation. "Ms. Tremaine," he said, his voice trying to sound serious. "The most important thing is my father. He can't suspect anything. This act has to be perfect." "I understand, Mr. Montgomery," Ava replied, her eyes fixed on Ethan, unwavering. "You can trust my professionalism." Her confidence and calmness made Ethan feel both a little uncomfortable and a little curious. This woman was clearly not as simple as he thought. Samuel Weiss interjected. "According to the agreement, Ms. Tremaine will move into your penthouse. Ethan, today, to facilitate preparations and to make things appear more natural. Of course, she will have her own room." Ethan nodded. It was part of the plan. but the thought of this beautiful and mysterious woman living under the same roof with him, even if only pretending, suddenly made him feel an inexplicable unease. The contract has been signed. The fates of Ethan Montgomery and Ava Tremaine, two people from completely different worlds, are now bound together by binding terms and a shared secret. The drama has only just begun, and neither of them can foresee what lies ahead. Especially Ethan, a powerful man who is overwhelmed by a beauty he did not expect, a beauty that may turn all his plans and calculations upside down. That same afternoon, Ava Tremaine, with a small suitcase filled with her most essential personal belongings, moved into Ethan Montgomery's luxurious penthouse. The apartment was located on the top floor of a prestigious Gold Coast skyscraper with panoramic views of Lake Michigan and the glittering Chicago skyline. The luxury here was a stark contrast to the cozy, but in need of repair, small apartment she and her mother shared. From the marble walls, the polished oak floors, to the expensive contemporary art hanging on the walls, everything exuded power and wealth. Ethan had arranged for Ava to have a spacious, comfortable bedroom in a separate wing of the apartment, ensuring privacy for both of them. When she entered, a middle-aged housekeeper, Mrs. Miller, who had worked for the Montgomery family for many years, greeted her with polite but somewhat questioning manner. Ethan had told Mrs. Miller that Ava was a very special friend and would soon be part of the family. The next few days were a race against time. Ethan, despite his busy schedule at Montgomery Enterprises, had to find time to coach Ava for her upcoming role. He gave her a detailed rundown of his family, the personality of his father, Richard, his hobbies, his relationship with his sister Laura, who was married and living in another state but would be coming home for family dinners. He also went over some of the key people in the company she might meet. It's important to be natural, Ethan insisted during a rehearsal in the penthouse's spacious living room. We need to have a proper story about how we met and fell in love. They agreed on a scenario that they met at an interior design and architecture exhibition a few months ago. Ethan, posing as a potential investor, was deeply impressed by Ava's deep understanding and passion for design. From their initial work meetings, they gradually discovered many commonalities, and feelings blossomed naturally. The initial rehearsals were awkward. Ethan, accustomed to command and control, felt uncomfortable with the need to act out affection. Ava, though trying to remain professional, couldn't help but feel awkward. One time, when Ethan tried to put his hand on her shoulder in a romantic manner, as scripted, they both felt awkward and quickly retreated. Perhaps we should focus on conversation rather than gestures, Ava suggested, her face flushing slightly. A mental connection might be more convincing, especially to someone as sensitive as your father. Ethan was surprised by her perceptiveness. He nodded in agreement. You're right. My father values intelligence and sincerity over showmanship. During the preparations, Ethan took Ava shopping for new clothes and jewelry, things befitting the status of the fiancé of the CEO of Montgomery Enterprises. He had his unlimited company credit card ready. But once again, Ava surprised him at a high-end fashion store on Michigan Avenue. When the sales clerk presented her with gorgeous evening gowns and expensive diamond jewelry, Ava politely declined. I think these are too extravagant, Mr. Montgomery, she said softly. I would feel uncomfortable wearing them. Besides, if we want to project an image of a relationship based on spiritual harmony rather than material things, then simplicity and sophistication would probably be more appropriate. She chose a few elegant dresses, elegant in color, not too fussy, but still showing off her beauty. As for jewelry, she only chose a thin silver necklace with a small stone pendant and a pair of simple pearl earrings. Ethan observed her, not saying anything, but a certain respect arose in his heart. This woman was not only beautiful, but also had temperament and understanding. She was not overwhelmed by wealth, and that made her different from the women he had known. Just call me Ethan when it's just the two of us, he said suddenly, breaking the silence as they left the store. It'll be easier to act. Ava smiled slightly. Okay, Ethan, and you can call me Ava. It was the first time they called each other by name in a more intimate way. A small step, but enough to ease the tension between them. Friday night finally arrived. The Montgomery family mansion sat majestically on the lake, warm yellow light pouring from the large windows. When Ethan's luxury car pulled up in front of the lobby, Ava's heart beat a little faster. This was her first real test. Ethan got out of the car and walked around to open Ava's door. He placed his hand on her waist, gentle but intimate enough for anyone to see. "Ready?" he asked softly, his voice a little strained. Ava took a deep breath. "Ready." Richard Montgomery was waiting at the door, his face more serious than usual, but his eyes were filled with curiosity and anticipation. Beside him was Laura, Ethan's younger sister, a lively young woman with a radiant smile. "Dad, Laura, this is Ava Tremaine," Ethan introduced, trying to keep his voice casual. "Ava, this is my dad, Richard, and my sister. Laura, hello, Uncle." Ava smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Nice to meet you all." Richard looked Ava up and down. His sharp eyes seemed to pierce her. Ava felt the scrutiny, but she remained calm, facing him with a straight, respectful gaze. Laura was more friendly. "Welcome. Ava, Ethan finally brought his girlfriend home to meet the family. I've heard a lot about your mystery from my stepmother." She winked mischievously. The dinner was formal, but not as tense as Ava had feared. Richard asked Ava a lot of questions about her interior design work and the projects she had worked on. With a genuine passion for her work, Ava answered fluently and confidently. She talked about her inspirations, her challenges, and her dreams. She didn't seem boastful or pretentious. "You seem to love your job, Ava," Richard observed, his voice softening. "Design is not just about arranging things. It's about creating a space, creating a feeling. It's an art." "Yes, I think so too, sir," Ava replied. "I've always believed that a well-designed space can positively affect people's moods and lives." Ethan sat beside her, mostly listening. He was amazed by Ava's natural charm and improvisational skills. Not only did she respond intelligently to his father, but she also charmed Laura with her cheerful stories about common female interests like fashion and travel, though Ava could only talk about places she dreamed of visiting. At one point, when Richard asked about Ava's family, she spoke candidly about her sick mother, not hiding her circumstances. "My mother is the strongest person I know, sir. She always taught me to be resilient and optimistic, no matter what the circumstances." Her voice was a little choked up, but her eyes still shone with pride. Ethan saw a tear roll down Ava's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. For the first time, he felt a genuine empathy for this woman, beyond the bounds of the contract. At the end of dinner, as they were about to leave, Richard suddenly took Ava's hand. "Thank you for coming. Ava, you're a good girl." "Ethan," he turned to his son, "you made a good choice." A rare compliment from his stern father took Ethan by surprise. He looked at Ava, who was smiling faintly at his father. For a moment, he almost forgot that it was all an act. He saw his father smiling more, talking more than he had in the recent gloomy months. A feeling of relief and something strange, warm, crept into Ethan's heart. On the way back, the car was quieter than usual. "You did well," Ethan finally said, breaking the silence. "My father seemed to like you very much." "Thank you," Ava replied, her voice a little tired. "He was a wonderful father. You're so lucky." Ethan didn't say anything more, but he glanced at Ava through the rearview mirror. Under the streetlights, her face looked more delicate and fragile. He wondered, why would this woman, with her beauty and intelligence, accept such a situation? Their life as a fake couple officially began. Awkward mornings in the large kitchen when they accidentally ran into each other while getting coffee. Occasional dinners together, usually spent in silence or with just a brief exchange of words about the next day's schedule. Ethan kept his distance, and Ava tried not to interfere in his personal life. Ethan, however, began to notice Ava's habits. He saw her staying up late in her makeshift office, working on blueprints. Occasionally, he heard soft jazz music coming from her room. He was curious about her work, about the dreams she had revealed to him over dinner with his father. In turn, Ava gradually discovers other sides of Ethan Montgomery. Behind the cold, aloof exterior of a powerful CEO is a man devoted to his work to the point of forgetting himself. A hidden loneliness that she sometimes catches in his eyes as he looks out over Lake Michigan at sunset. And above all, there is the love and respect he has for his father, although he doesn't often express it in words. One evening, when Ethan returned late from a stressful meeting, he found the kitchen light still on. Ava was there, holding a cup of hot tea, looking pensive. "Not asleep yet?" Ethan asked, his voice slightly surprised. "I couldn't sleep," Ava replied, taking a sip of her tea. "Just thinking about something." Ethan poured himself a glass of water. "About your mother," Ava nodded. "The doctor said she's showing some improvement, but she still needs to be monitored. The cost of treatment." She hesitated, not wanting to complain about money with him. Ethan was silent for a moment. "If you need any help, medically, I can recommend some good specialists." Ava looked up at him, a little surprised by the offer. "Thank you, Ethan. I'll keep that in mind." A small, fragile connection was formed between them. Between the luxurious but cold walls of the contract, the drama continued. But true feelings, though not yet named, began to creep into the hearts of both of them. And no one knew that there was another pair of eyes silently watching them. A pair of eyes full of ambition and suspicion. Living under the same roof, even if it was just acting, inevitably brought Ethan and Ava closer together. One weekend morning, Ethan, in his usual tracksuit, walked into the kitchen and found Ava fiddling with the French press he rarely used. Her chestnut brown hair was loose on her shoulders, a few strands falling across her forehead. Her makeup-free face looked a few years younger and exuded a gentle, friendly air. "Good morning," she said, a little startled to see him. "Sorry, I'm not very familiar with this kind of machine." Ethan chuckled softly, a rare sound from him. "Let me help." He stepped beside her, the distance between them closing. The faint scent of lavender from her hair made him involuntarily inhale deeply. He showed her how to use the machine, their fingers accidentally brushing against each other as they both reached for the glass bottle. A warm current ran through them, making them both slightly embarrassed and quickly pull their hands away. "Thanks," Ava mumbled, her face slightly flushed. "Nothing," Ethan replied, trying to sound casual. But the scent and softness of that accidental touch lingered in his mind. After that awkward breakfast, they spent the afternoon rehearsing for an important company charity event the following week, where Ava would be making her official public appearance as CEO Montgomery's fiancé. They sat in the library, where Ava had turned a small corner into her workspace. Ethan noticed her elaborate interior design sketches laid out on the desk, clean lines and original ideas. "Is this the project you're working on?" Ethan asked, picking up a blueprint. It was a design for a small apartment, cleverly utilizing the space and cozy. "Oh, yeah," Ava replied. "A previous client referred me. Just a small project." "Looks impressive," Ethan commented sincerely. "You have real talent." "Ava?" His compliment surprised Ava. She smiled. "Thank you. Design is my passion." They began to talk more about each other's work. Ava was curious about the complex world of finance and real estate that Ethan was running. Ethan, in turn, was attracted to Ava's creativity and artistic eye. He realized that behind her gentle exterior, she was a smart, opinionated, and incredibly driven woman. He began to see her not just as a contract partner, but as an interesting person. Meanwhile, at Montgomery Enterprises, the sudden appearance of the CEO's fiancé has become a hot topic of discussion. Most people are curious and somewhat admiring of Ava's beauty and charm. However, there is one person who is not happy about this news: Genevieve Marlowe, the group's chief financial officer CFO. Genevieve, a woman in her 40s, is intelligent, sharp, and extremely ambitious. She has worked at Montgomery Enterprises for many years, gradually rising to the position of CFO. and has always secretly viewed Ethan as a competitor for the higher ranks of power. Or at least, she wants to have a greater influence in the strategic decisions of the company. The appearance of Ava, a beautiful woman who seems to have won the hearts of both Ethan and his father, makes Genevieve feel threatened. A future mistress of the Montgomery family may hinder her plans. At the company's charity party, held at one of Chicago's most luxurious hotels, Ava appeared next to Ethan in a simple yet elegant emerald green evening gown that accentuated her fair skin and emerald green eyes. She wore light makeup, her hair tied up to reveal her slender neck, and wore a silver necklace that Ethan had bought for her. Her beauty immediately attracted everyone's attention. Ethan, in his tuxedo, felt an indescribable pride as he walked beside Ava. He saw the way people looked at her, the admiration, the curiosity, and even the tiniest bit of jealousy. He unconsciously squeezed Ava's hand, an unconscious protective gesture. Genevieve Marlowe, in a powerful red dress, approached them, a smile on her lips, but her eyes sharp as knives. "Ethan, it's great to see you so happy," Genevieve said, her voice artificially sweet. "And this must be the famous Ava Tremaine." "Hello, I'm Genevieve Marlowe, CFO of the company. Nice to meet you." "Hello, Miss Marlowe. It's nice to meet you," Ava replied, smiling politely but warily. She sensed an unfriendly presence lurking beneath the woman's appearance. "That was pretty quick, wasn't it?" Miss Tremaine, Genevieve continued, her eyes fixed on Ava. "Our Ethan is always so focused on his work. You must be very special to have caught his attention so much, and Sir Richard's affections as well." Genevieve's words were full of hidden meaning, like a poisoned arrow aimed straight at Ava. Ethan frowned, about to speak up to defend her, but Ava was one step faster. "Love sometimes comes unexpectedly." "Miss Marlowe?" Ava smiled, her voice still calm. "I feel very lucky to have met Ethan and to have been loved by his family." Ava's intelligent and confident retorts made Genevieve pause a bit, but she did not give up easily. Throughout the party, Genevieve occasionally tried to approach Ava, asking clever questions about her past, her job, and her relationship with Ethan, trying to find some loophole. Ava, with her alertness and intelligence, skillfully dealt with it, but she felt quite tired under Genevieve's scrutiny. At the end of the party, when they were alone in the car on the way home, Ethan said, "You don't need to pay attention to Genevieve. She's always been like that." "I understand," Ava replied. "There are people like that in every environment." She sighed. "It's just, I'm not used to being on guard all the time." Ethan looked at her. Under the dim streetlight, he saw the exhaustion on her beautiful face. He suddenly felt guilty. He was the one who put her in this complicated situation. "Sorry," he said softly. Ava was surprised. "For what? For all this?" Ethan said, his voice low. "For dragging you into my mess?" Ava was silent for a moment. "It's a deal, Ethan. We both have our reasons." She looked out the window, the lights of the city passing by. "I just hope it all ends well." In the days that followed, Ethan seemed to care a little more about Ava. He noticed that she often skipped lunch because she was so absorbed in her design work. He began asking Mrs. Miller to prepare snacks and bring them to her office. Occasionally, he would stop by her door, listening to the soft jazz music and the scratching of pencils on paper. One evening, while Ethan was reviewing financial reports in his penthouse office, he heard a slight cough coming from Ava's room. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to go in to check. Ava was sitting at the drawing table, her face pale, her arms crossed over her chest, coughing. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked worriedly. "No, it's fine." Ava tried to smile. "Just a little cold. Probably the change in weather." Ethan touched her forehead. "You have a fever." Without another word, he hurriedly went to get medicine and a glass of warm water. He took care of her clumsily but sincerely, helping her take the medicine and placing a warm towel on her forehead. Ava looked at him, her emerald eyes slightly surprised. "Thank you, Ethan." "Get some rest," Ethan said, his voice softer than usual. "Don't overwork yourself." He pulled the blanket over her and quietly left the room. But the image of Ava, weak and fragile, lying on the bed, haunted him. He realized that his concern for her was no longer simply the responsibility of a husband in disguise. Something deeper was sprouting in his already calloused heart. A few days later, when Ava was feeling better, she brought a cup of herbal tea to Ethan's office. "To thank you for taking care of me," she said, placing the cup on his desk. "Nothing much," Ethan replied, but he felt the warmth of her touch. They sat and talked for a while, not about work or contracts, but about more mundane things: books, music, places they wanted to go. Ethan was surprised to discover they had a lot in common. Also during this time, Ethan learned that Ava's mother, Grace, was about to undergo a major surgery related to her treatment. He saw Ava's worried face and called her frequently to check on her condition. One evening, when he saw Ava sitting alone in the living room, her eyes red as she looked at the picture of her mother on the table, Ethan did not hesitate to go over. "What happened to your mother?" he asked gently. Ava looked up, trying to hide her weakness. "You're going into surgery, Ethan. I'm worried." Ethan sat down next to her. "I know some of the best doctors in Chicago in this field. If you want, I can have them look at your mother's case. Or at least give a second opinion." Ava looked at him, gratitude clear in her eyes. "Really, Ethan, you can do that?" "Of course," Ethan insisted. "Give me the information of the doctor treating her." Ethan's sincere and timely help deeply touched Ava. She had nothing more to say than thank you from the bottom of her heart. He not only helped her with medical expertise, but also brought her great spiritual comfort during her difficult time. Ethan, in a rare moment, opened up too. He told Ava about the pressure his father put on him, about the expectations he placed on him, about how he sometimes felt like he was just a money-making machine, a cold CEO rather than a person with his own feelings and desires. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just a CEO, not a person," he said, his voice a little sour. Ava listened intently, sympathy clear in her eyes. "I know how you feel, Ethan. Everyone has their own burdens." That moment of sincere sharing broke the last ice wall between them. They were no longer just two strangers bound by a contract. A deep understanding and sympathy had blossomed, and with it, the emotional vibrations that both tried to deny but could not extinguish. However, happiness and peace are often fragile. While Ethan and Ava's feelings are gradually blossoming, the ghost of suspicion from Genevieve Marlowe has not left them alone. Genevieve, with her cunning, has begun to secretly investigate Ava's past, especially her difficult financial situation before marrying Ethan. And what she finds is about to cause a big storm. The brief days of peace quickly passed, giving way to undercurrents that threatened to overwhelm Ethan and Ava's budding relationship. Genevieve Marlowe, after a period of quiet investigation, finally had in her possession information that she considered a deadly weapon to bring Ava down and influence Ethan. She found evidence of Ava's $80,000 debt from a previous failed business, as well as Grace Tremaine's costly illness. To Genevieve, this was the perfect picture of a gold digger trying to take advantage of the wealthy CEO. Meanwhile, Richard Montgomery, after the introductory dinner, showed more and more affection for Ava. He often called her to have tea at his house to talk about art and life. He saw in Ava intelligence, filial piety, and a beautiful soul. His health also seemed to improve thanks to the joy and optimism that Ava brought. This made Ethan feel more grateful to Ava, but at the same time, it also increased the burden of guilt for the deception. Ethan's feelings for Ava grow. He no longer sees her as just an actor in his play. He finds himself genuinely attracted to her intelligence, the strength hidden behind her gentle exterior, and her kind heart. He becomes unreasonably jealous when a young business associate admires and tries to approach Ava at an event. He realizes he wants more than a marriage contract. He wants Ava for himself. For real. Ava can't deny Ethan's attraction, his genuine concern, his help with her mother, and the rare moments of sharing melt her defenses. She sees Ethan for who he really is beneath his cold, powerful exterior, a warm-hearted, loving, and vulnerable man. She struggles with her growing feelings for him, the no feelings clause in her contract, and her fear of who she really is. One weekend afternoon, Ethan decided to surprise Ava. Knowing her love of jazz and the outdoors, he arranged a romantic picnic at a beautiful botanical garden in the suburbs of Chicago. They sat on the grass, enjoyed snacks and wine, and listened to soft jazz music from a portable speaker. The atmosphere was peaceful and romantic. "Thank you for a wonderful afternoon." "Ethan?" Ava smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. "It's been a long time since I felt this relaxed." "I'm glad you like it," Ethan replied, looking deep into Ava's eyes. He took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Ava," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I know things started out strange between us, but what I feel now is real." Ava's heart pounded. She looked at Ethan, waiting for him to continue. I think I've fallen in love with you, Ava," Ethan confessed, his voice sincere and earnest. "Not because of the contract, not because of my dad, but because of who you are." Tears welled up in her eyes. Ava didn't know what to say. She loved him too. Loved the warm person hidden behind that cold exterior. Loved the care he showed her and her mother. But the fear and guilt of being lied to were still there. "Ethan, Ava hesitated. "I have feelings for you too, but we're lying to everyone, especially your father. If he knew the truth, he would be so disappointed and hurt." "I know." Ethan squeezed Ava's hand tighter. "And I can't keep doing this. I'm going to tell Dad the truth. Whatever happens, I'm going to face it. I want a real relationship with you, Ava, based on honesty and love." Ethan's decision makes Ava both touched and scared. Will Richard accept this harsh truth? Is their love strong enough to overcome the storm? At this point, the real storm hit. Richard Montgomery's health took a turn for the worse. A mild heart attack sent him to the emergency room. The news was a blow to Ethan and Ava. They rushed to the hospital, seeing his father lying on the hospital bed, pale and weak. Ethan felt his heart clench. Ava was by his side, holding his hand tightly, trying to give him some warmth and strength. Her sincere concern for Richard was not fake. She truly liked this stern but kind man. While Richard was still weak, he took Ava's hand and whispered, "Thank you, Ava. You bring some light. Ethan, he's so lucky to have you." Richard's words were like knives stabbing Ava's heart. She felt extremely guilty. How could she continue to deceive someone who was treating her so well, Genevieve Marlowe? Of course. Did not miss this opportunity. Hearing that Richard was hospitalized, she immediately appeared, showing concern and worry. But her real purpose was to find a way to get close to Richard and sow doubts about Ava. She hinted to Laura, Ethan's sister, and a few close family members about the disturbing information she had accidentally discovered about Ava's past. "I'm really worried about Sir Richard and Ethan," Genevieve said to Laura, her voice full of false sympathy. "Ava seems like a nice girl, but I hear she had a lot of financial trouble before she met Ethan. I just fear there are ulterior motives." Laura, though initially sympathetic to Ava, begins to have some doubts about Genevieve's cryptic words, especially when she sees her father in critical condition. In the hospital, when they were alone, Ethan looked at Ava, his eyes filled with determination. "I can't delay any longer. Ava, as soon as Dad gets a little better, I'll tell him the whole truth. We can't build happiness on lies." Ava nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. Ethan, I will face this with you." A few days later, when Richard was out of danger and more alert, though still very weak, Ethan decided it was time. He made an appointment to meet with his father alone in the hospital room. Ava was there too, standing behind Ethan, her heart pounding. "Dad!" Ethan began, his voice choking. "I have something to tell you, something very important. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Richard looked at his son, then at Ava, his eyes filled with surprise and anticipation. Ethan took a deep breath and told the whole story. From the pressure Richard put on him to get married, to his desperation at not finding the right person, to the fact that he hired Samuel Weiss to find someone to play the role of his wife. He made no excuses for his actions, just told everything honestly. "And that's how I met Ava." Ethan finished. "It was just a contract, an act. I know I was wrong. I lied to you. I'm so sorry." The air in the hospital room became heavy. Richard was stunned. His face paled, then slowly turned red with anger and frustration. He looked at Ethan, then at Ava, who was bowing her head, not daring to face him. What did you say?" Richard stammered, his voice shaking with disbelief. This whole engagement is just a business arrangement. A show to fool you," he coughed, clutching his chest. "Dad, please calm down." Ethan panicked and quickly supported his father. Ava also stepped forward, worried. "Uncle Richard, please take care of yourself. I'm sorry. I know this is wrong. I accepted the contract because of my family's difficult circumstances, but I really like you." Richard gasped, trying to regain his composure. His initial anger passed, replaced by a deep disappointment. He had placed so much hope in this relationship, in his future daughter-in-law, whom he loved so much. "So, that affection I saw between you two?" Richard asked, his voice weak but his eyes still sharp. "Was that part an act?" He looked straight at Ethan, then at Ava. Ethan took Ava's hand, looking up at his father firmly. "No, Father, it may have been so at first, but now, my feelings for Ava are real. I love her. I love her for who she is, her strength, her kindness, her intelligence. I want to marry Ava for real, not because of a contract or to please you, but because I can't live without her." Ava looked up at Ethan, her eyes filled with tears but filled with happiness and gratitude. She turned to Richard, her voice sincere. "I love Ethan too. Uncle, my feelings for him and my respect for you are completely genuine." Richard was silent, looking at the two people in front of him. He saw the sincerity in his son's eyes, saw his love and determination. He also saw Ava's remorse and genuine affection. He remembered the times Ava took care of him, the happy conversations, the warmth she brought to the family. He was a father, and more than anyone, he wanted his son to be happy. The door to the hospital room opened slightly, and Laura walked in, her face a little confused. "Dad, Ethan, Ms. Genevieve, she's outside. She said she has something important to tell you about Ava." Ethan frowned. "No need. It's obvious." But Richard said, "Let her in." His eyes flashed with determination. He wanted to settle things once and for all. Genevieve Marlowe strode into the hospital room, a thin document in hand. Little did she know that the bomb she was about to drop had already been detonated by Ethan and Ava, but in a completely different way. "Hello, Sir Richard." "Ethan." Genevieve smiled, a smile she thought was full of goodwill. "I'm sorry to bother you at this time, but there is some information about Miss Tremaine that I think you should know, for the safety and reputation of the Montgomery family." She glanced at Ava triumphantly, then handed the documents to Richard. "Here's evidence of Ms. Tremaine's very difficult financial situation before she met Ethan, including her large debt and her mother's medical expenses. I'm just worried that..." Richard did not take the file. He looked at Genevieve with a cold, piercing gaze, the gaze of a seasoned leader who has seen through all intrigue. "Miss Marlowe," he said, his voice weak but powerful. "My son Ethan's approach may have been unconventional, even misguided to begin with. But Ava Tremaine here has shown more character and sincerity than many I have ever known in my life." Genevieve was stunned. She hadn't expected Richard to react like that. Richard continued, Her insights and concern were noted. But perhaps it was misplaced, and at the wrong time. My son and Ava took it upon themselves to tell the truth. A truth that may have been disappointing at first, but it was built on remorse and a desire to start over honestly. Ethan gripped Ava's hand tightly, looking at Genevieve with disappointment. Genevieve, I once considered you a trustworthy colleague, but your actions have crossed the line. Your ambition has clouded your judgment and compassion. Genevieve's face went from confident to pale. Her plan had completely failed. Not only did she fail to bring Ava down, she also made a bad impression on the Montgomery family. She stammered a few words of apology and hurriedly left the hospital room, her career at Montgomery Enterprises probably over. After Genevieve left, the room grew quieter. Richard looked at Ethan and Ava, a rare, small smile on his lips. "So," he said, his voice a little more cheerful, "at least your play had an unexpectedly good result." He turned to Ava, his eyes affectionate. "Ava, I'm not angry with you anymore. I understand your situation. What's important is that you and Ethan really love each other now. I've seen a positive change in Ethan since you've been around. He's happier, warmer. That's something no amount of money can buy." Then he looked at Ethan. "Ethan, you've grown up. Dare to love. Dare to admit your mistakes. And dare to take responsibility. That's the quality of a leader, a family man." Ethan and Ava looked at each other, tears of joy falling. They had overcome their greatest challenge. "So, when are you two going to have a real wedding?" Richard asked, his voice full of meaning. No contract this time. Cheerful laughter echoed in the hospital room, dispelling all tension and anxiety. A few months later, an elegant, intimate wedding was held in the beautiful garden of the Montgomery family mansion, overlooking the idyllic Lake Michigan. Only the closest people attended. Ava, in a pure white wedding dress that she had sketched herself and a tailor friend had made, looked radiant. Ethan, in a groom's tuxedo, kept his eyes on his bride, a happy smile on his face. Richard Montgomery, fully recovered, proudly handed Ava's hand to Ethan. He looked at the two children with affection and satisfaction. "Take good care of each other," he said, in his vows. Ethan looked deep into Ava's eyes. "Ava Tremaine, no more contracts, no more pretending. From this moment on, you are my wife, my partner, my everything. I promise to love, cherish, and protect you for the rest of my life." Ava, her voice choked with emotion. "Ethan Montgomery, me too. I love you with all my heart. I promise to build a happy family with you, sharing all the joys and sorrows in life." After the wedding, their life took a new turn, filled with joy and happiness. Ethan, with Ava's support, became a more decisive yet humane leader who knew how to balance work and family. He was no longer the cold, distant CEO. Ava, with financial support from Ethan, who insisted it was an investment in her talent, not her previous contract money, reopened her own interior design studio, calling it Tremaine Interiors. With her talent, creativity, and growing reputation, her studio quickly gained a reputation in the Chicago architecture and design community. She was able to cover all of the medical expenses for her mother, Grace, who had also made a full recovery and was delighted with her daughter's happiness. 1 year later, in their dream home in a quiet suburb of Chicago, with a garden full of flowers that Ava tended herself, children's laughter echoed. Ethan played with his handsome eldest son, Liam, on the soft rug in the living room. Ava stood by the window, smiling at them. She was pregnant with her second child. Richard Montgomery, now a cheerful and healthy grandfather, visits his grandson often. He sits in an armchair, reading to Liam, his eyes sparkling with happiness. Ethan looked up, meeting Ava's eyes. He smiled, a warm and loving smile. He walked over to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hand gently resting on her stomach. "Are you happy?" Ethan whispered in her ear. Ava leaned her head on his shoulder. "I've never been happier," Ethan. Together they looked out at the garden, where the golden afternoon sunlight was shining. Their love, which began with a calculated and unexpected contract, had gone through many storms and challenges, and then blossomed into a complete and sincere happiness. It was proof that sometimes the most unexpected things bring the most wonderful results, as long as people dare to face the truth and open their hearts to love. And Ethan Montgomery, the powerful CEO, learned that valuable lesson thanks to a fake wife with amazing beauty and an even more beautiful heart. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you love this story, don't forget to click like to support the channel. Share this story with family and friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories.